Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Um, Today, we're doing things a little differently. We're still diving into the world of tech, but, well, we're focusing on a specific country this time.
Yeah, we're heading over to China.
China, exactly. But we're not going to be talking about the Great Wall or anything like that. We're going even deeper. We're looking at how artificial intelligence and energy storage technology are developing over there.
It's fascinating, really, how these two huge fields are kind of, intertwined. They sort of feed off of each other.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just like we came up with this idea out of thin air. We're actually basing this entire deep dive on some research that was published in Acta Psychologica.
Yeah, some really in-depth stuff.
So to kick things off, let's paint a picture of the situation in China. They're kind of a big deal in both AI and EST, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're filing patents, publishing tons of research. They're definitely major players on the global stage.
Yeah. And speaking of research, the study we're looking at today used a pretty interesting way to measure all this. They actually used stock market indices as a proxy.
Yeah, the CSI AI Index and the CSI Energy Storage Index, to be exact.
Now, hold on. The stock market. How does that tell us anything about technology?
Well, think about it this way. The stock market reacts to real progress. When a company makes a big discovery or develops some cool new tech, investors get excited. They start buying stock, and the price goes up.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. So it's like using the stock market as a way to track innovation and investment in these fields.
Exactly.
So what did the researchers find? Did AI and EST rise and fall together in China?
Well, not exactly. When they looked at the data as a whole from like 2016 to 2023, they didn't see a super clear relationship.
Wow, that's surprising. I mean, you'd think that more AI would automatically mean a greater need for energy storage, right?
You would, wouldn't you? But it turns out it's not that straightforward. These things are connected, but it's a lot more complex than that.
So are you saying we need to take a closer look at like different periods within that time frame? Maybe there were times when AI was booming, but energy storage wasn't quite keeping up?
Exactly. That's where things start to get really interesting. To get a more nuanced picture of this relationship, the researchers used what's called a rolling window technique.
Rolling window. I have to admit, that sounds a little bit technical. What exactly is that?
Imagine you're watching a movie, right? But instead of seeing the whole thing at once, you only see it in short clips, one after another.
Okay, I could picture that.
So it's like breaking down the whole story into individual scenes. That's essentially what the rolling window does with data. It lets you see how things change over time within each period.
So instead of just getting the ending, we're seeing all the plot twists and turns of the AI-ECT relationship.
Precisely.
Cool. So let's talk about AI first. What did the research show about how AI has been influencing energy storage technology in China?
Well, um, it's been kind of a mixed bag, to be honest. There were definitely times when AI was really driving progress in EST, like better algorithms for optimizing energy use, predicting demand, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. I mean, I remember reading about how Google and DeepMind developed this incredible neural network back in 2020 that was able to optimize power systems in a totally new way.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of AI being used to make energy storage more efficient.
But I thought you said it was a mixed bag. So were there times when AI actually held back progress in EST?
Yeah, there were actually. And this is where things get really fascinating because on the surface, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I mean, wouldn't more AI development naturally lead to a greater need for energy storage?
You'd think so, right? But remember, the real world is messy. These things don't always develop in a perfectly synchronized way. It's like what we were saying earlier about AI being the brain and EST being the heart.
Right, that analogy.
Sometimes the brain gets ahead of itself. It develops so fast that the heart can't keep up. And that's kind of what happened in China in 2019.
What do you mean?
Well, there was this huge surge of investment in AI that year, but the energy storage sector didn't get the same level of support. So EST lagged behind and struggled to meet the growing demands of all this new AI tech.
So it's like the brain is coming up with all these amazing ideas, but the heart isn't strong enough to pump the blood to make it all work.
Perfect analogy. And it wasn't just about investment either. The speed of AI development sometimes outpaced the technology needed to manage its energy demands. Think about all those massive data centers running complex AI algorithms. They need a ton of power.
Yeah, definitely.
And at times, the energy storage solutions just weren't advanced enough to handle it all. It created these bottlenecks and integration problems.
So even though AI has this incredible potential to like revolutionize energy storage, there are going to be some growing pains along the way.
Absolutely. It's a constant back and forth, a push and pull between these two fields.
So we've talked about AI's influence on EST, but what about the flip side? How does energy storage technology impact the development of AI? Is that relationship a bit smoother?
It's actually a bit more of a steady, supportive kind of relationship, like a reliable backbone.
Oh, okay. So EST is the dependable friend that AI can always count on.
Pretty much, yeah. You see, AI needs a lot of power to function, especially with all those data centers and complex algorithms we were talking about.
Right. And this is especially true in China because they've been really pushing for renewable energy sources, haven't they?
Exactly, all those big solar farms and wind turbine projects you hear about. But the thing with renewable energy is that, well, it can be a little unpredictable.
Yeah, the sun's not always shining and the wind's not always blowing. That's got to make things tricky.
That's where energy storage comes in. It's like a buffer. It helps to smooth out those fluctuations and provide a more consistent energy supply, which is really important for AI systems.
So it's like a giant battery that keeps everything running even when the sun goes down or the wind dies down.
That's a great way to put it. And it actually makes renewable energy a lot more viable, which in turn benefits AI development.
It's like this positive feedback loop. Are there any specific examples of this happening in China?
Oh, absolutely. One great example is the rise of compressed air energy storage, or ACAS. It basically stores energy by compressing air into these huge underground caverns.
Wow, that's impressive.
And you know what? CAS has actually played a key role in providing backup power for some pretty important AI infrastructure in China.
So for a while, it seems like EST was kind of like AI's best buddy, always there to lend a helping hand. But I thought the research mentioned that there were some hiccups along the way.
Yeah, there was a period between late 2021 and early 2023 where things got a little, well, bumpy.
Oh, right. I think I remember hearing about those issues with lithium-ion batteries. Weren't there some concerns about them overheating and catching fire?
Yeah, those were some pretty serious concerns, not just for energy storage, but for electric vehicles, too.
It was a big deal for a while.
And unfortunately, those safety concerns, along with some technological roadblocks in EST development, ended up kind of slowing down progress in the AI sector.
Ah, so even though the problem started in EST, it had these ripple effects that impacted AI as well. It's like that domino effect we talked about before.
Exactly. And it just goes to show how interconnected these two fields really are. They're not isolated. What happens in one inevitably affects the other.
So basically, you're saying that if we want to understand where AI is headed, we need to understand where EST is going and vice versa.
Absolutely. It's all part of the bigger picture.
Which leads me to something I've been thinking about. We're talking about some pretty powerful technologies here, technologies that have the potential to really change the world.
Mm.
But what about the responsibility that comes with all that power?
That's a crucial point, and it's something we all need to be thinking about, not scientists and engineers, but policymakers, business leaders, and everyday people like you and me.
Yeah, because it's not just about whether we can do something, it's about whether we should and how we do it in a way that doesn't, backfire.
Absolutely. And as AI and EST become even more intertwined, those ethical considerations are only going to get more complex.
So we got to start asking those tough questions now before it's too late.
Couldn't agree more. It's about finding that balance between pushing the boundaries of what's possible while also being mindful of the potential consequences.
That's a great point to keep in mind as we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the stock market to some pretty mind-blowing energy storage tech, and landed on some pretty important questions about how we manage these powerful technologies responsibly.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. But remember, this research was focused on China. However, these dynamics are playing out all over the world. This interplay between AI and EST, it's shaping the future everywhere.
It really is.
So to our listeners, no matter where you are, keep this in mind. The future isn't set in stone. It's being shaped right now by the choices we make, the questions we ask, and the actions we take.
That's a powerful message.
So stay informed, stay curious, and stay engaged. It really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Like, what if the way we generate energy changes completely?
Right.
Would that flip the script on this whole AI-EST relationship?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. What happens if something like fusion energy actually becomes a reality?
Fusion energy, isn't that like the ultimate clean energy source?
Exactly. Unlimited power, no waste, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And if that happens, well, the whole energy landscape changes. Those limitations we've been talking about with traditional energy storage, they might not even matter anymore.
Wow. It's mind-blowing to think about. So we've got fusion energy on the horizon, and then there's all this talk about quantum computing too, right?
Oh yeah, quantum computing is a big one. Those computers could be insanely powerful, but they're also going to require massive amounts of energy to run. So that's another factor that could completely change the game for energy storage.
So many big changes coming down the pipeline. It feels like we're standing at the edge of something huge, and we don't even know what it's going to look like yet.
No. We are, and it's exciting, but it's also a little bit daunting. I mean, remember those periods we talked about where AI development was outpacing energy storage?
Yeah, and it was causing all sorts of problems.
Right. We need to learn from those experiences. We can't just get so caught up in the hype of the next big thing that we forget about the infrastructure needed to support it.
So we need to be smart about it. Make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between pushing the boundaries of innovation and making sure we have the resources and systems in place to handle the consequences.
And that leads me to something I've been thinking about this whole time. We're talking about really powerful technologies here, technologies that could fundamentally change the world.
Mm.
But do we ever stop and ask ourselves if we should? I mean, what about the ethical implications of all of this?
That's a great point, and honestly, it's a question we should be asking about every new technology. But it's especially important with something like AI and EST, which have the potential to be so transformative.
Because it's not just about what's possible, it's about what's responsible.
Right, absolutely. And the more intertwined these technologies become, the more complicated those ethical questions get. So we need to start having those conversations now before it's too late.
I couldn't agree more. We can't just blindly charge ahead without thinking about the consequences.
It's like we're holding the keys to the future, and we need to make sure we're steering in the right direction.
That's a powerful image. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive for today. We've covered a lot of ground. We started with the stock market, talked about fusion energy, and ended up contemplating the future of humanity.
It's been quite a journey. And just a reminder, this research focused on China, but the dynamics we've been talking about, they're playing out everywhere. The relationship between AI and EST, it's shaping the future of the entire world.
So to our listeners out there, wherever you are, remember this. The future isn't something that just happens to us. We're all creating it together right now with the choices we make.
Every decision, every action, it all adds up.
So stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, stay engaged because the future is what we make it.